My guest today is PG Aditiya, who is the National Creative Director of Dentsu Webchutney. He and his teams work on brands like Google, YouTube, Uber, IKEA, Swiggy, Twitter, just to name a few. And they have collectively picked up some of the most prestigious awards for creativity at global stages such as the Cannes Lions. PG himself was named Creative Person of the Year by Campaign magazine in 2019. So, all in all, he is a very creative and talented guy. I first connected with him during an inspo demo to Dentsu a few months ago, but I've been hearing his name echo through the industry for a number of years now. I've always been curious about his creative thinking process, and I'm just damn excited for this conversation. PG, welcome to Think Inspired. Alrighty, so PG, hey man, how are
How's it
you?
going, dude? How's it going? I'm doing well. It's a Sunday. It's a good Sunday.
This is a question I've been wanting to ask you since the first time we connected, which was a few months ago, and that is, what does inspiration mean to you?
Um, it um, it actually means it's. I don't know, dude. I don't think it actually means anything to me, unfortunately. I
All
think
right,
it's.
thanks for joining, and
That's it. That's it. That's all we have for you guys today. But yeah, actually, dude, I think I'm like I have a lot of baggage of trying to be this guy who I'm actually a very conservative thinker in that sense. If there's any whatever like brief problem kind of a thing, I kind of try to package it before solve it. So you'll kind of hear, oh, okay, what if the idea could be called this, or what if we could do something that was called this or looked like this? So I think I'm kind of obsessed with that. Like, what's the shiny wrapper? Kind of a thing, which is kind of fucked up, because I've realized that it's actually a very shallow way of thinking, and I'm also, I guess, I don't know. Do you mind a really emotional answer to this?
no, I would
Like,
love one.
okay, so I think it's I don't think I've ever thought of myself to be cool enough to be an artist, in that sense. Like, I don't subscribe. I don't think I'm not competent for the sex, drugs, rock and roll lifestyle. So it's pretty much for me been a look at it as a tool, look at it like, de-glamorize this, de-romanticize it, strip it down to what you're supposed to fucking do, and do your fucking job and go home and fucking sleep. And like, I've had a very conservative upbringing. So anything that anything that makes it feel like something larger than life is I just tell myself, shut the fuck up and do your job. I don't think I've until very recently kind of allowed myself to romanticize what I do in my own head. I love my brain. I think all of us who kind of in this are in any field like this are supposed to love our brain. But yeah, I've tried to not think too much about how I think, because like, dude, I mean, I'm sure we've all like seen the whole pride comes before fall is probably my biggest fear. That, oh yeah, here you are, you're going to like talk all of this cool shit, and you're going to talk about da da da, and before you know it, you're not going to be able to work. Yeah, falling from grace is probably my biggest fear, and therefore humility is an impulse, even if one has to fake it. So there's this one thing kind of earlier that I think I remember tweeting about. It was called, I think we have a new term these days called Tanxiety. Tanxiety is this need for you to constantly be grateful to the things and the people around you, and dissociate something with something that you came up with and that you can credit for yourself. Because I think that entire age of self-made geniuses is aged very badly. It's not politically correct to be a self-made genius. these days. Even if you are or you are not is a different thing. I think we have too many tools out here today to think that we've been able to do this by ourselves, to think that we only have ourselves to credit, right? So I'm very guilty of being a anxious person. So I genuinely don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I probably think about it.
Even I don't know if it answers the question, but it's fascinating everything that you've actually just said. Sounds like, so firstly, you don't consider yourself to be a rock star, which is fine and probably a good thing, but I'm sure many people in the industry do consider you to be a rock star, just
No, I'm not. I don't think I'm a cool guy. That's what I don't fuck the rock star. I don't know. I think that's just a. I don't think I'm a cool guy, dude. I've been a very lame person for a large part of my life. I was a very fat kid. I grew up obese, which means I have a slightly different idea on. Like the whole idea of body shaming and fat shaming. Like I have maybe we'll get to that at some point in the conversation, but I think when you grow up like that, right? Like I don't think you consider yourself part of the cool gang in whichever space that you've kind of been in. So yeah, you really try to hang on to any bit of coolness that you've gotten, and you try not to like take it for granted, I guess. I think it comes from some stupid, dark place like that.
maybe, yeah, perhaps it does, but I'd say that ultimately your kind of track record and all the creative work you've done over the years with Webchutney speaks for itself. And perhaps regardless of your self-image, right, as an artist, as a creative director, as whoever, as PG, the work is cool, right? And sometimes I think that's ultimately
that's all it is about. Yeah, fair enough.
What it's all about, right?
Fair
So
enough, absolutely.
I really do like something that you said, which is almost crowding out the romance from the concept of inspiration, right? Because even the word, it's a loaded one. People assume like, okay, metaphorical lightning bolt from the sky, moment of artistic genius and an impulse to go and change the world, and then someone uses that impulse to go and actually change the world.
Right.
And oftentimes it's just more like grindier than that. It's less romantic. It's a lot more like on the ground and pragmatic. So I guess you're in this like fascinating situation context where not only are you required to be creative and use like creative judgment, but you're also in a sense responsible for the creativity of lots of people, right? For the teams that you manage. So how do you think about I don't like this word enable because it's a kind of disgusting corporate word.
Right.
And that isn't the right word, but how do you let's say whether it's enable, empower, just create the conditions for them to be super creative and inspired?
I think it's important for anyone to know that their bosses and their bosses, etc., like that they are not operating by a script. I don't think I have I'd like to think that I don't have a script on most points. So at least for these guys, if it's just about like if it's the self-express, be yourself, all of that kind of a thing, you just have to live that to some extent, and they just need to see that you're doing whatever the fuck you want to do, and you don't need to tell them do what you want to do. You need to do what you want to do. So it's kind of and I honestly don't think I'm like doing this for them as much as I'm doing it for myself, and that in a weird way is doing it for them.
Right.
I think we all have a moral responsibility to take ourselves less seriously the more successful we become. The last thing I'd want to if I become a more and more serious person while becoming a more and more successful person, I'd hate myself. I think that's a very uninteresting way of living life or looking at it. So so I think it's just you just have to kind of do that, I guess, and hopefully the people who think enough about their own life and purpose and where they want to go and they don't need everything to come from you, right? For all you know, you're just filling up this little Like you're just validating 5% of something that they already been thinking about. So I think it starts by making sure that you're hiring right, I guess, the
Right.
people in your team. So there's this one. Have you read No Rules Rules by the Netflix culture book
No,
by
I haven't.
Reed
Not
Hastings?
as yet.
Oh, dude, oh my God, it's a fucking Bible. It's a great book. I think he talks about something called talent density, Reed Hastings,
Right.
in that book. And it's a pretty self-explanatory word, I guess. I think uh, one of Netflix's attempts globally has been to only have A players in their team across.
Right.
So you are not in an environment where you're asked to be better than the 7 other people in your team, because it's very likely that all of y'all are probably at the same level. And all of y'all, so you have this density of talent. You're not really living in a place where you know that, oh yeah, there are A players and B players and C players, and each of them do, there's a particular role that each person kind of has. Like, that's why we kind of, I think at some level, if we look at people, like let's look at education, right? Like most of us, most of us who, let's say, who have not experienced school in some crazy private international school kind of an atmosphere, our classrooms were filled with A players, B players, and C players.
Right.
Right. So the backbenchers as a concept is just a mild way of saying you're a B player or a C player academically. But as we get educated more and more, and as we make more personal choices about how we want to be educated, by the time you're doing your second post graduation or your MPhil or your PhD, there is so much talent density in your batch. For a fact that maybe the batch size is only like 7 or 9 people or 11 people, but man, you want to like fucking like work with them for the rest of your life. You
Right.
guys are already thinking about the first 5-10 years of your careers and the kind of things that you all want to do together. So I think achieving that level of density is important. And the closer you are to that, then you can just focus on yourself, dude. I think
Fascinating.
like, yeah.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it.
No, that's about it. No, that was a good cut. Fascinating is a lovely place to end that point.
No, I really think that's such a brilliant and nuanced managerial insight, right? I forget who said it. I think it was Dhru Houston, who was the founder of Dropbox. I think it was him. He went to MIT, and he said the real value of going to MIT was like the 4 people who were sitting next to me, right? It's the fact that like those 4 people were pretty smart, pretty insane, and I'd probably want to start a company with one of them, and that was the value of MIT, not the books, not the lessons, not the lecturers, but just that that sense of talent density.
Even in like this year's Harvard this year, I think they like the whole idea of getting into Harvard in a year where for a fact that it's all happening online.
Right.
And I think it's stuff like that people are really missing. No, that dude, I still work like one of the directors I work closest with was a college batchmate. And we have plans for the films we want to make for the next 30 years.
Right.
Pretty much, right? So I completely agree with you. There's that's important. Yeah.
There's something I remember tweeting like quite a while ago that about as we were building Inspo in private beta, I had this long thread of just like random musings on the nature of inspiration. What was the tweet? I think it was inspiration turns B players into A players.
Yeah.
Right. And possibly a controversial thing to say, right? Because of it doesn't necessarily always do that. But I think the point I was getting at is from my experience of just building teams and recruiting, oftentimes it hasn't worked out well with the people who were sort of A players on paper, right? Like all the right experience, either right schools, like built stuff at Google, built stuff at wherever, Twitter, Amazon, and you think, man, this person will be insane and solve so many of our like technology problems. And sometimes those were like the least productive experiences mutually as well. Clearly, like they didn't feel like a sense of belonging. We didn't. And some of the best people have been, on paper, underwhelming.
Right.
Like almost you'd never even make it past a resume screening.
Right.
And yet in conversation, there's just like a shine or a spark in their eyes. They're like, wow, you really care about creativity, right? Like more so than anything else. And I find that those little nuggets come out in the most beautiful, unexpected ways, right? Like, turns out someone is applying for a hardcore like back-end engineering role, and yet as a kid they had a diary in which they wrote loads of poetry, right? Or like have a big book of like creative ideas that they have not allowed anyone to read. And those are the people I think, okay, that's fantastic, right? Because like you will get what we're doing here on a very sort of deep like level that's even beyond culture and the way that most people think about culture. It's just complete alignment. So that's what I was really getting at with that. You know what? If you're inspired, because what I find interesting is that inspiration seems to like create this very tangible energy, right? Like you could read a book or a really interesting article and still feel like quite passive. You could feel like intellectually nourished, that wow, that was smart, and now I am more knowing, right? But it doesn't necessarily drive you into action. But a piece of like inspiration, I guess that's where the thunderbolt metaphor comes from, right? It just shocks you into like, damn, we need to make something happen. So I think that's what I was really getting at, that like you may be in a certain position that's like professionally not, not level A, and yet if you find that right context for you, become something much more than you currently are. True. Right? Is that something you've experienced in your work?
Yeah, I think I have. And sorry, if I just may move, I want to talk a little about the point that you made a little earlier. Sorry, this is one more plug for Inspo.
Yeah.
But no, dude, I like the fact that you've realized that this product is this AI inspiration product, but I really like the fact that the core of the company is about shit like this.
Right.
and it has to be. I'm glad you're not like trying to find like just repeating the elevator pitch over and over again. Like it's like there was this one thing about like what happens when AI takes over our jobs is a question that I think journalists have been obsessed about for the last decade, right? Hey, there's that construction again. Is that what I'm hearing? There's one little saw in the background.
Yes, that's exactly what you're hearing.
I'll talk to that beat. Let's see if we're able to make something out of it. No, but dude, so even if that, like, if and whenever all of that happens, I'm saying like you will always find a version of like, you know how when fabrics started, like fabrics, for instance, were first, there was handmade fabrics, and then there were these factory-made fabrics. And then once the factory-made fabrics became the mainstream thing, the people who did handloom were able to, there was a smaller bunch of people, but they were able to actually charge a premium. Right. So right now you have this thing where if it's handmade, it actually costs more than the factory made stuff.
Right.
So human powered creativity will only get some sort of a relative benchmark so that it could price itself higher. So in that sense, I like the fact that like this entire company, like, and especially like stuff like this, what you've been doing with this podcast, etc., you actually like, you kind of understand that like it's actually about like a lot of like shit like this, and that it's not about like some, oh, here's the thing, here's the solution, okay, now you can make the ad. Like I'm glad you're not oversimplifying it, and thank you for that. And that's why I think it's actually like a really, really interesting idea, this whole thing of Inspo. But anyway, coming back to the point earlier. So it was interesting because on paper there was something which I think that I completely like did not have as well when I started out in my career, which is I didn't know Hindi.
Right.
Okay, so I've grown up in Chennai. I did my postgrad in Maika and Ahmedabad, and Maika Ahmedabad was the first time I got to hear Hindi on a daily basis.
Right.
And I still consider myself in some way. I do think in English a little bit. I think I majorly think in English, and I've been like in India. That's like, in advertising at least, right? The heroes that we know in the last 30, 40 years. Of course, there have been lots of like heroes who are English thinkers as well. There's Alik Padamsee, there's Freddie Birdie, a lot of these, Rajan Nair, one of the person who wrote Raymond's The Complete Man, basically, who was also our copywriting professor. Like there are lots of people who you could say that, yeah, you do have enough role models who've made it to a great level in the industry.
Right.
But you know for a fact that the apex predator is are folks who understand the common person and can speak in Hindi. And there is this, this very, very soft Hindi imposition happening on creativity as well, if you want to reach the very, very top. And that, I think that is something that's happened in the last 20, 30 years, which meant like that a guy like me was kind of like, okay, cool. You know what? You're going to get somewhere. Don't expect to get all the way up there, but you're going to get somewhere. So you got to be okay with that. You'll possibly write ads that get, featured in airport lounges or some shit. or wherever that is supposed to go. But anyway, so the thing is, so the first 4-5 years, I think, was, oh, dude, like crazy Hindi shaming, week on week. But I think that, I hate to do this, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of a thing. I'd like to have not had that experience very objectively. But no, but it's also fun to kind of know what you're beating, right? As you kind of do it. So and it's also been, I got into like Webchutney because it was a digital company, which meant that back in 2011 the internet was predominantly English. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to be able to write English copy without being the guy who can't write Hindi copy. Right, so it kind of felt like a comfortable, a safe space to kind of begin with, and like right now we know for a fact that, like, I'm very, very glad once again that if like this, the learning was okay. Let me put it this way, right? I'm not trying to go on one. Oh, you ought to be able to like survive with just one language in your head. Like that's only something the British say. I'm perfectly fine having like 5-10 languages to like think with. That's the beauty of being in India. You have that much exposure. But it's also kind of like, I think any writer or any creative person right now, their ability to know that like Hindi or English is not like this cultural living room. Cultural, like this television, and the rest of the languages are kind of like just furniture pointing at the television. Like it's not like, it's like, I remember, dude, like Garnier had, if you remember Garnier's line from a while back, it was take care, Garnier. You remember this, right?
I do.
So when that was translated in Tamil, I remember like seeing this when I was like whatever 8-9 years old. So I think it was Priyanka Chopra or Jacqueline Fernandez or one of the leading Bollywood actors at that point who was the face of the brand. So in Tamil, take care is translated as Badirama Pathukanga. Okay. It's a longer word. Okay, so take care. You finish it in like half a second. Badirama Pathukanga, 1.5 seconds, right? So on TV, when they were actually saying this, Priyanka Chopra's done talking. In the dub.
Fantastic.
She's done talking. She's like, she's done. And the fucking line is still going on. So it's, I don't know, dude. I think we have embarrassing stories in like every time we try to like have this dominant language-based thinking and we see how it's translating across. It sucks everywhere. So I'd love to be able to possibly like, one of the things that I'm no longer looking for is asking someone in which language do you think? Right. I don't think that's important. I think it's important in which language you're able to like, yeah, it like if the ad is coming out or whatever you're doing, it's important where that application is. I think we have enough tools around us to like apply it in a more diverse way. I don't think someone who thinks in a particular language should only be allowed, or rather is only qualified to communicate or do some sort of creative communication in that language. I think that's something of the past possibly, but yeah, that's one thing that's probably one, I'd like to think one stereotype that won't exist in a while.
Man, so much to unpack there. I feel I really resonate with everything that you said about languages and also the human powered creativity. I'd love to stay with both themes for a bit, actually, because I feel like language localization, again, horrible word.
Right.
It's almost anything but language. Right. That's the low hanging fruit part of it. Like literally, translating words into another language so that people can understand. That's the easiest part, and that's also just completely the wrong way of going about things. Right. I feel like it ultimately boils down to two things. One is awareness and empathy. Again, two words that are used so often that no one really knows what they mean. But I do think both of them actually super applicable here. Like in your context, right? You were at least aware that I do not speak Hindi, right? And I do not think in Hindi. And that awareness almost like qualified you for the role, right? In a sense, you didn't actually need to become like super proficient in Hindi. Just that awareness that, okay, this is like, let's say either a deficit or this is just a reality. This is a context I'm coming from. And I'd much rather people just be aware of like, okay, cool, that is what it is, as opposed to living in denial or, being defensive or almost creating like permission for themselves to like say, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, right? Because I can do all of these things. And then, I think ultimately understanding other cultures, it's about empathy. It's not about language translation, right? Like even the word take care in Tamil, the concept of taking care is probably a different concept, right? In the way that it is in Hindi. It's a complete and it's not about how do you translate those two words so it fits into half a second. It's actually about what does that even mean, right? Is taking care in Tamil, is it a light thing? Is it a heavy thing? Is it familial? Is it individual? And that to me that's not a question of like, do you speak Hindi? Do you speak Tamil? That's just like, can you ask those deeper questions to actually understand people? And if you can, you'll be fine, because there's, again, I really don't believe in this kind of Swiss Army approach to life and work. As Swiss Army knife, I don't think you have to do every single thing, as so many people claim that you need to now in the creator economy. Like it's like, sure, you can, but honestly, I feel like there's two things that really power the world, and that's like capital and stories, right? And if you can get good at these two, the rest will almost like take care of themselves, because it's impossible that you're going to be like the best linguist and the best creative thinker and the best copywriter and the best graphics guy. It's like, look, you're probably good at one or few of these. And then you should get really good at being a magnet for the others and just like letting them into your life, because that's how I think great projects are done or built.
That's very true, dude. I think it's like one of the things I think, and this I think I've learned this more from Gautam, who is the CEO of Webchutney. It's really important to like tell the people in your teams and around you what you suck at. They should know, and you should be the guy telling them that. You should be the person telling them that. Like, it's completely to beat the stereotype, which like you're supposed to be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah, they're 10 on 10 on a few things, but the rest of it, they don't suck. They're probably like an 8 on 10, right? Yeah. But no, there are things you suck at. Right. Like what? Like so. That's yeah. Like I suck at like thinking about, and I think I suck at thinking about craft. I think craft has been one point, and it's the same thing, dude. Like it's what I think we began the conversation with that, right? Like it's like, I think detail has been something that's been very hard for me personally to focus on. I think I have some weird adult ADD kind of a situation. The internet doesn't help, but it's one of like, so I'm yeah, but if the people who are actually good at craft know for a fact that, oh, okay, the my boss's boss evidently sucks at that, so if I get good at that, that means there's actually a gap, there's actual value that I'm creating because I know what is missing. Maybe we could do a little more of that possibly, but yeah, I agree with you.
100%. And the other theme that I really loved how you articulated was just about how the handloom example, right? And generally the conversation about AI versus people, or just technology versus people. It's like it's frankly, it's an uninspired discussion.
It's true,
because of the word versus. Right, it's like because that sells headlines, right? That gets people reading articles to like almost create an enemy, and but actually it's always been about humans and technology, right? And then when there is new technology, yes, of course, like not trivializing what happens to industries. Of course, there will be jobs that are displaced. There will be a lot of like creative destruction and the rest of it. Sure, absolutely. But it's never so binary. It's never so 0 to 1 as well. Like context change. Like I love that example. Other example I think about is how emails versus letter writing. Right? Like of course, like the postal industry probably took a big hit once emails took off, right? And people no longer wrote like handwritten letters to each other, or even faxes and things. Of course, that's sure, absolutely.
Sure.
But the relative value of a handwritten letter changed, right? And a value that you can't necessarily even put a dollar amount on. Now today, right? If I were to send you an email versus like write something by hand and send it to you by post, man, the emotion, it's not even comparable, right? In terms of emotional resonance.
The job that Joaquin Phoenix has in the film Her.
Yeah, I mean, literally like...
It's exactly this.
Yeah. Exactly that. Right.
You're right.
So, I feel like that nuance is super important. And again, thank you for the super kind words on Inspo. It absolutely reflects that philosophy that, you know what, I feel like it's unpardonably arrogant to say that like AI will replace creative people or even big core chunks of the creative process. I feel it's just a ridiculous discussion because the first part is that we don't even understand the creative process. As you said right at the start, right? Like you don't, I forget the words that you use, but you almost don't like to think too much about how you think. Right? Because that's a post-rationalization exercise. Like, we love doing this. We love like post-rationalizing success. You've just had a lot of...
Why do you read your email after you've sent it? All of us do this. We go to sent items and we're like, let me see what I've just said. Yeah. It's the same. Once you shit, you have to look at your shit before you flush it down. But it's a terrible habit. I agree.
Exactly, right? And it's just... it's also a dangerous part of the process because suddenly we start to create these like beautiful, elegant playbooks for ourselves. Like you could tell me a story of how you've won all of these Cannes awards, right? And I'll believe you. I'll be like, oh, wow, that's how he did it. That's how the team did it. I'll go start an advertising agency, hire a bunch of people and say, let's do this, and won't win anything and wonder like what went wrong here.
Right.
When the reality is like that's probably not how you did it. That's just how you've post-rationalized. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges in like the business world as well. It's almost like this over-reliance on Western scientific method, right? Like most great ideas don't come in conference rooms. They don't come based on some like rigorous analysis. They're impulses. They're not even articulated to ourselves. And yet once we have them, we feel the pressure that, okay, man, we've now got to templatize this, right? We've got to almost like make it explainable. And as soon as you've done that, I feel like, okay, I'm not saying that there's not a lot to learn from like frameworks and books. That's not the point here. It's just the fact that, even coming back to the whole theme of this conversation, inspiration, it's something that I feel the mission for this podcast and our journey is not so that we can distill it down to a formula, right? Which I think many technology companies are quite guilty of. They try and like, let's, figure out like some sort of algorithmic answer to this big existential problem. Even the question of like searching for information. Right. The answer is not the Google algorithm, right? That's just like one tool that tackles like a very, very small chunk of the overall searching for answers or seeking meaning problem. So I feel like, by the end of this journey, we will have like thousands and thousands of definitions and thousands of expressions of it. And that's good. That's a good thing. I don't think that makes us like less focused. I think that actually expands the sort of horizon set.
Google has a similar way in which they look at their own company, right? I think the latest Google campaign is called "With a Little Help from Google."
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, ultimately it's the human who is going to want to take credit for it. Yeah. Like even if it's the AI that's done 80% of the job, you're going to have a person who's going to want to take credit for it. So it's at some level, I think at the point at which we're going to start taking, I hope, in a very short time, you're going to have a lot of people who take inspo for granted, because that's what success is actually going to mean for it. Like, oh, it's part of my process so much that I don't even feel like thanking it anymore.
Right.
Right. It's the same way in which we look at most of Google's products, especially search. We take it for granted because it's so intrinsic. So. And it's a similar thing with drugs, dude. In fact, like if you were to compare inspo to a cigarette,
yep,
right, and if you were to like kind of ask yourself, like, I think that'll be a great chart. Like, what does it do for your lungs? Inspo does no harm. Cigarettes, lots of harm. Inspo, like whatever. Like just do a sadharan inspiration. Inspiration. Just fucking. But it's true. It's I think it's a lot of things that we just consider important to us, we take for granted, and we don't give it credit. But you'd still know that it's successful. So yeah, I think that's probably likely.
It's funny you've tapped into something that is going to probably be one of our biggest challenges to business growth. And in fact, it's funny you mentioned this. In our very first conversation a few months ago, when we were pitching and showing inspo to bunch of Dentsu teams and you were on the call, someone in that conversation told me afterwards that I think your biggest threat is not some other GPT-3 tool or Pinterest, it's the human ego. Right? Honestly, right. Because like the people who use you and get value will not want to share this with other competitors or teams or clients. Like they will want to keep 100%. It quite like safely guarded. 100%. And when it works for them, and they create a killer campaign for whoever, Royal Enfield or someone else, the last person they're going to say, help was inspo. They'll say like, cool, this was me. This was all me. So like, that's your business challenge. It's
Dude, that's what, take any, the most popular questions asked to Alexa and Google Assistant. And, all of them are questions that kind of size them up as machines. So it's so you think you're human kind of a show, right? So do you have a boyfriend? When you're going to get married? Are you going to like, it's questions like this. So I think every time we have technology that tries to somewhat simulate human behavior, where automatically we have this guard on and we love to do we love to size it up. So yeah, you're right. The human ego is going to be one of its biggest things, which is why I think it's actually like going to be a very, very, like you're going to need like really interesting creative ways to kind of market this as well, because dude, I mean, I don't think the day is too far when GPT-3 becomes part of the credit list for a Cannes Lion campaign. Right. So whatever, as inspiration partner and stuff like that. But Yeah, that and quite honestly, man, like I think anyone who's on the, oh, it's going to replace my job. I mean, come on, tell me, which is the union of creative people in the world? Like, are we unionized? Do we have some, like, no, this is the most, there's justice in this profession simply because, or in this industry, because it's actually about how good you are. And
Yeah.
it's yeah, I don't want to like and that's that point of the immigrant is taking our jobs, the younger people are taking our jobs, the machine is taking our job. Like, I mean, AI is the last whatever, like, line of defense for this entire thing, right? What is AI today used to be an immigrant earlier. It's just or it used to be a younger person earlier, or it used to be like there are so many patriarchs would be like, the women have come and taken our jobs. So anyone who wants to be in this nice, babu, like, have take a 1 hour lunch break kind of and sleep in the afternoon. So if you're not vocally prepared to like talk about how you need to get better at what you do, it is a moral responsibility for you to not exist in your profession for too long, especially if it's in a profession like which are not essential services. I don't think we are all in peacetime professions. We are, apart from propaganda, we're not useful during war. So yeah. I don't think that logic applies too much in these kind of industries.
I completely agree. I feel as though there's too much cinema surrounding the AI conversation. We love to like be apocalyptic about it, but ultimately,
because it's finally about them, right? Like, so far, like, finally that conversation is personal. Finally, it's become something about my job, right? So,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, but 100%. But ultimately, I think people lose sight of what it even is. Correct. As well. It's not this like, super consciousness that's taking over the world. It's like statistical regression on steroids with a lot of computation, right? Like, would we, statistical regression has been around like a long time. It's not something that we've all like lost sleep over, or because it's just also just not very sexy to write about in the newspapers. And I think, yeah, as with so many of these topics, it's just about like zooming out, diffusing the conversation from like feverishness and anxiety and saying, okay, what is this? Like what, and asking the question like, okay, so what are machines uniquely equipped to do? And what are people uniquely equipped to do? Like, and yeah, machines are uniquely equipped to do many things that can serve a creative process, like gathering creative references, right? Storming the minds of millions of people, virtual or otherwise, from generations, proxied by the content that they've put online, and just, organizing that, synthesizing it. But we're not there yet, and I don't even think we'll necessarily ever be where a machine will take the next step, right? Like in a really meaningful way, right? That is the domain of people, and the reason I don't even think we'll ever get there where a machine is completely taking that call is because we still have no idea how the human mind works. We still have no idea why we do the things that we do. We still have no idea how like we pattern match, how we synthesize, where this wellspring of inspiration even comes from. So to say that it can be displaced without even knowing what it is just like, that's really dumb, right? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So like, yeah, sure, machines will get better and there'll be GPT-4, GPT-5, GPT-N, right? But does that mean that like you're going to be out of a role, right? The next creative director of Webchutney is going to be an AI like GPT-40? Like, of course not, right?
No, but even if the next creative director, even if the next creative director is an AI, I don't think it's as simple a conversation of, hey, you're being fired. Here is the machine that's being hired in front of. It's, oh my God, that's not how it's going to happen.
100%. I think it's always going to be a collaborative relationship. And I don't want to over romanticize that, because of course there will be roles that will shift. Some roles will go, but then as you said, it's about like, this isn't a new thing. This has come up with either any form of technology or any threat from anywhere, like humans, right? It's fascinating. What an amazing analogy, actually. Like once upon a time, it was immigrants, right? Now it's AI. Tomorrow, maybe something else. So feels like a similar conversation that's always just like reincarnated as something
In
like slightly
with
different,
different new threats.
a new
Yeah.
avatar, and okay, like something else to like distract us from the truth.
Fair enough.
Amazing. So I wanted to, before the chat, before we started recording, we were just talking about like all of your sort of recent success at Cannes, and you also mentioned how like it's not always been like that, right? You weren't born into the world just winning a bunch of awards, and there were like periods of struggle phases where like maybe you and the team were just not cracking it, you were uninspired. Yeah, love to hear some of those stories, and then perhaps like what you did afterwards, right? How did you actually break through those periods of like either lack of inspiration or poor execution or whatever it was?
Sure. I think this whole journey of w- I no I've promised myself after hearing Anna Wintour in one of the 73 questions episodes in Vogue, she's asked like, what's your least favorite word in fashion? And she goes, journey. Okay,
Right.
so I'm not going to use the word journey. If you hear me use the word journey, please edit that out.
Okay.
But for instance, let's the the whole can thing. I think it started once again. It started out with Gotham, dude. I'm not the guy who. Funnily enough, I don't have as much foresight as I think I do. So so he actually told. This is a funny story. So Siddharth Rao, who I think we both know, was kind of Siddharth offered Gautam, like he was like, hey, listen, there's this one huge talk that you can one of the IITs is asking for, like, this 2-day, 3-day workshop talk kind of a thing. And I'm thinking of putting your name in. This was in 2014. No, not 2014, 2016, I think. It was a couple of years after we started Webchutney Bangalore. Gautam was like, okay, cool. So Sid has given us an opportunity to do that. Or maybe like, and he asked him, he's like, if I have to go to Cannes this year, if PG and I have to go to Cannes this year and just see what all the fuss is about. We were winning nothing, dude. But I mean, at that point, we were sure we were winning a couple of like whatever Kormangla ad festival, I guess. Like was nothing to write home about too much. But so he basically had two choices. Should I go and just see what Cannes is like for a week? Not participating, no, nothing, just go as a tourist. Or should we go do this cool IIT workshop? And Gautam was like, I've picked Cannes. I hope you're okay. I hope you're not going to miss giving a lecture at IIT. And I'm like, thank you so much. I will never miss giving a lecture at IIT. There's no, you don't need to worry about that at all. So we went there. We basically went there as tourists in the beginning, and we just made sure to like, we were very dutifully writing a blog for brand equity through that week about how it was and what it was felt like as these, little boy soldiers at Cannes trying to like, learn about this whole thing. And I think we had, and like that was just a year to learn. And we were like, okay, cool. Now that we've learned it, and dude, like I honestly, I'm telling you that it's a great festival. I will 100% not even try to like come across as glib in anything that I've been saying about it so far. It's a transformative experience for any creative person. It still is. Like, I mean, if I'm lucky enough to go there in future, I will still feel as good as I did, I think, in the first year. So the second year is when we thought we had cracked what it would take, right? And we did 3 pieces of work. In hindsight, I think we failed the ideas. I don't think we knew what it took to like get it to that level. But then it all flopped, everything. I think we applied in some 40 categories. And the night before the shortlist would be out, Gautam and I, we were like, whatever, we had taken one Airbnb close to the venue. And dude, I was praying like like I was just praying the whole night. I was a very religious guy until about 2 to 3 years ago. And this is a very shallow story, but basically, that I any if you ask any super, like, practicing religious person, they will tell you that they feel like they have a direct connection with their God, right? Like they are able to talk to their God on a one-on-one basis. And I thought I had that. I thought I 100% was speaking to someone who got me and who was figuring life for me. And that morning, and it's so funny because I don't think my faith is actually based on like anything too real. Because the moment I saw that I had flopped in every category, I'm like, what the fuck is this whole fuss about? I just spent 12 hours like sleepless writing in one book, writing the name of like this thing in the book over and over and over again. And no, and nothing happened. And that night is, and I kid you not, that night is when I just stopped, dude. After that night, I completely went proper atheist after that, and I've been so since. And it's you can see how little it takes for something that, but it does have, like, losing at that level. I think can be pretty heartbreaking, pretty much. And also it's great because you actually get to realize that once again, like, God doesn't love creative people more than the next guy. like you've seen this, right? Like whatever, Michelangelo and fucking Mons and Salieri, and in so many of the Indian saints, and like in people in music, and they all have this, they praise God, they have this direct one-on-one thing where most of the songs are actually in praise of God, etc. So if you are a creative person, you're supposed to be doing God's work at one very, very, the soul of the job is supposed to be, art is something that is supposed to be divine. So I did feel for a very, very long part of my life that that I was really getting a better rap than anyone around me because God liked what I was doing. And that night, it completely shattered. It was bullshit. I was just fucking around with myself. And I think the last 3 years has just been a very dogmatic, okay, you know what it's going to take. So if this idea is actually not good, it's not going to make it. Don't fucking go pray yourself out of this. Just don't, like, just use that time for something else. Come on, be a real person here. So it's actually, yeah, dude, it's been a lot of shit like that. Yeah.
That is, and that's such a great story, man. I mean, it's like,
I started eating meat very, like I decided I would start eating meat like properly that night. Okay, so it was 12:30 midnight. There's this bar called the Gutter Bar, which is like kind of the Janta of Cannes, basically. Okay, so it's like right next to the venue. And I saw that there were two French people who were just like, they were just eating this hot dog. And I was like, there they are. They're eating the hot dog. They don't think anything's wrong with it. Why the fuck am I here thinking there's something wrong? It's whatever.
right.
But anyway, it was fairly, transformative, I guess. Whatever.
I don't think I've ever heard such a story where there's a clear demarcation where someone clearly believed in, inspiration was divine, and then suddenly it stopped being divine, like overnight. This second, and it starts to almost become like it happening down on earth.
Yeah, and it happened in the most. I don't know if God exists at Cannes Lion. If there's any place, I mean, there are lots of beautiful cathedrals in France. I don't know if God exists there, but it happened in the most capitalist place, the least likely place, which is why, dude, I'm talking about this. I think people who I've worked with, etc. This is just one fun story that I just generally like to talk about whenever we have nothing to talk about. Yeah, dude, it's like the deepest shallow story that I have. The shallowest deep story. I don't know. One of those.
I like that. That is nuts. I don't know how many times you've shared this story, but I can't wait for you to properly write this down, right? In the context of all the work that you've done, in the context of, because I feel like, regardless of what people believe, whether they believe in God or they don't, I just think that is such really insightful experience, right? Like we're joking about it now, we're laughing about it, but it's serious, right? It must have changed you in so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
many ways,
cried,
like
man.
complete, yeah,
I
absolutely.
cried. I just realized it's all fucking fake. Like it was one of those like, yeah, stupid, but yeah.
Do you feel that you were, how exactly were you changed as a creative person? So you mentioned that it sounds like you just got more like pragmatic
Yeah,
and
like
ruthless
I
about your
don't think
work, that
anyone,
like,
yeah, I don't think there's anyone up there who wants me to succeed. I want me to succeed.
right.
So it's on me. It's not on, like, I can't fucking blame anything else. And like, it's okay. Let me just while we're on this topic, right? Like, and this is, I don't know if you were raised religious, or if you still are, etc. But it's actually like the withdrawal symptoms are real with anything that I think you believe in ideologically. So just like going sober has a lot of withdrawal symptoms, like stopping believing, like if you want to stop believing in God and shit, that has a lot of withdrawal symptoms. You don't get to
Yeah.
easily do it. And I'm talking, dude, I was like a 15 minutes of puja every day kind of a guy. So it, like, you don't get to do it very easily. So at some level, I think, I don't know, like even right now, I still have, like, I think there is this part of me which is like, which likes to, not, like, my puja room is as it was 3 years ago. I can't bring those idols down. I don't think
Right.
that's I don't have it in me to do that. At the same time, I don't think, I'm so sorry, I completely lost my train of thought, man. Just give me a second, I'll try to
Sure.
remember. Yeah, I think we need it. I don't know if it exists, but I do think we need it. I do think we all need something with the kind. If we are setting ourselves some really high pressure goals in life, and if we're saying, oh, I need to da 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 da, then you need some sort of external validation and da 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 and all of that to it, right? So if you're able to tell yourself that, I think, I mean, I kind of disagree with a lot of the things that he says otherwise, but Jordan Peterson actually has an interesting point of view on this. He was like, when he's asked the question of, do you believe in God or not? He's like, I like to live my life assuming there is one.
Right.
Right. And there's a difference to both. So I think I still live my life assuming that if there is one by the end of it, which I mean, yeah, it's probably not there, but if there is one, then yeah, I don't like to have, like, yeah, I think that's important. I think it does help, you be able to listen to yourself more. If you have a plan for your life, it helps you execute that plan. So um, it actually does very useful things. If you were to strip religion and spirituality down to what it's actually about, it's a tool like everything else. It's like GPT-3. it
Yeah.
is it is inspiration. And I think it's been interesting to kind of use spirituality with more discipline, than before.
This is such a big point. It's something I've thought about quite a bit before, both as a human and also like as a fiction writer, right?
Right.
That like I feel there are some people, and they are literally in the business of uncovering objective truths,
Right.
right? Let's scientists, physicists, historians, right? And they're in the business of like understanding facts. And absolutely, I understand that. I feel for so many of the rest of us, we are not in that business, right? And whilst it's still a noble pursuit, like truth is absolutely a noble pursuit, I feel like sometimes why are we not okay with effective metaphors that help us get through the day.
Right.
Right? Like it always baffles me when like people have really heated arguments or go to war because of some passage in a religious text, right? That they are convinced that this happened,
Right.
and you are invalidating me by suggesting that it didn't happen. And it's like, look, whether it happened or it didn't happen, again, why don't we like that? That's the role to me of the historians, right? Let them do their job, right? But for us, it's more about like, as you said, it's pragmatic. It's like, can we make meaning from this?
Right.
And can this help us like smile and be calm and make it through the day and live a meaningful life? And if it can, then it serves its purpose, right?
It does.
I really feel like there's nothing wrong with a beautiful lie.
I agree.
And I feel like a little nervous even saying that, just because of the world that we live in today, and everyone seems to be in the pursuit of like objective truth. But I know that I'm not really. Anyways, I know that like I have certain beliefs that I know that, okay, these are leap of faith beliefs.
True.
Right? I can't falsify them, but they are true to me. And for now, that is enough. And maybe I'll be in France one day and I won't win any cans and I'll say, damn, right? Like, and my worldview will change, and that's fine. Again, that's part of it. But I feel like, whatever works. And as you said, like these are not, we talk about these things as really lofty, weighted concepts that almost like transcend any earthly kind of conversation or, practice. But they're not the case. They're like so many of them are either like mechanisms for meaning, mechanisms for control, mechanisms for like anxiety relief. But to even have that conversation, I feel like you have to diffuse some of the heaviness out of the balloon, right?
Agree. Yeah, I think it's if you had no context of anything, any history of the world, and if you chanced upon a mosque, a church, a temple, a gurudwara, anything, a synagogue, you cannot dispute what artistic brilliance lies in those buildings.
Right, absolutely.
You will have 10,000 reasons to love them, one of which might not be that you believe that there is divine energy in that and it connects to the meaning of life. Maybe you won't believe in that, but you will find 10,000 reasons to love that. It's real, dude. It's not. I mean, and I don't. I agree with you. I don't like belittling people who. I mean, I don't. Atheists are supposed to have this superiority complex. I think that's. I would genuinely not want to be associated with that stereotype. If anything, I think this is the easy way out. And I think people who truly ask themselves harder questions about faith are leading more difficult yet fulfilling lives to themselves. Who the fuck am I to judge whether that's
right?
That's the right way to do it. So immense respect for people who've not broken their faith yet, which is, I don't think I've this is not the truth. I just don't have faith anymore. I think that's not having faith is very different from having discovered the truth. I don't think I've discovered jack shit. But it's my mom and like my parents and everyone my like family. So it's funnily enough, I'm not the first atheist in my family. I think so that's a good thing. There's always listening about that, but it would be I'd be doing a huge disservice by making this something that supported by virtue signaling because of it and shit like that. It's not fair.
I feel I'm reminded by something you said right at the start of the conversation about like context and packaging. Right. And sometimes I feel like I wish religion was almost packaged more as like poetry than scientific truth.
Right.
Because I feel like in the context of poetry, it makes complete sense. Right. Like none of us we don't dispute poetry, right? We don't try and like falsify it or like get too sort of angry over it. Like I can't, I think there's fewer people going to war over a poem versus like a religion.
I saw 8,000 daffodils at a glance. No, I saw 10,000.
Exactly.
I read 2,000.
Exactly, right? So I feel but because they are almost like packaged as like almost scientific historic doctrines, that's where like we run into all kinds of trouble. It's like, look, this wasn't conceived by some like post-rationalized scientific method,
Right.
right? It was moments of inspiration, and oftentimes I think that a lot of the pioneers of religions or spiritual movements, their intentions weren't to be
Oh, yeah.
pioneers and create something that lasted, 10,000 years.
There's a great quote, right? Like Jesus did not, but the Christianity was not found by Jesus, but by Jesus's followers.
Right, absolutely.
Right? So yeah, that's true.
Perhaps, yeah, Jesus Christ was just expressing himself in that moment.
No, but still, dude,
and
what a terrific story. I think,
absolutely.
And that's where we need. It's a remarkable story.
Absolutely.
And one of my biggest. I still want to. I think going around Mount Kailash is going to be like one of the most breathtaking things that I hope to do at some point in my life.
Right.
Visiting Jerusalem is something that I want to genuinely do. Yeah, this is real. I mean, there's so much to love about it.
Man, 100%. Wow, I could talk to you about this for hours, and I think we've already gone on quite a bit. So, yeah, but no. I wanna the last like couple of components of this. I wanna let's take it back down to a more earthly level.
Yep.
So I'm gonna try something fun that I gave you a little bit of heads up about, right? So we've already talked a little bit about inspo. I searched for one interesting topic that, of course, like you think a lot about, right, as a creative person, and that is brands, right? And I saved just a few pieces of inspiration that resonated with me, and I wanted to get your take on them. So I'll read them out to you if that's cool, and I'd love if you could just share any crazy top of mind responses, thoughts, questions, abuse, whatever you want. It can be crazy, so let's just jam. All right. So the first was honestly just a simple question that actually I just came up with just after seeing all of the different definitions and perspectives and random like stuff about what brands can be, right? So the question is simply like, what do brands mean to you?
Brands are an opportunity very selfishly for me, brands are an opportunity for great creative ideas to exist.
Wow.
Probably, yeah. Very selfishly. They do a whole lot more than that for me, but that's what they are, probably.
Fantastic. That's incredible. They're almost an excuse for creative people to be creative.
yeah, pretty much. Right? Pretty much.
Okay. Brilliant. That's got me thinking about a bunch of things which I'll write down later. Cool. So next piece, this was a GPT-3 powered thought starter using associations from Haiku Jam as well. So the thought is, in love, you want your partner to be in love with you. In branding, you want your product to be in love with your customer.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You want your product to be in love with your customer. Yeah, pretty much. Though I do have like, I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe we've taken the whole customer as the king/queen thing a little too far.
Right.
Like just generally, because I think like, the customer is a king and the emperor's new clothes are kind of two sides of the same coin of like the way that you think about it, right? Like, because you're also supposed to like never disagree with the dumb king.
Yep.
So there's that, but it is, it's true to a level. Yeah. And I think a lot of customers also generally like kind of feel like I don't know, like, do you get annoyed for the last 6 seconds of every customer service call when you're being forced to have a nice day?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's probably one of those. Right. But yeah. Sorry, how am I supposed to like? I'm just trying to understand. Like, so this is just a freewheeling chat based on whatever.
Yeah, it's literally we've branded these as thought starters, and it's just gets thoughts started, which is exactly what it's
Great.
doing.
Super.
This one I just found curious simply because of like almost the composition of the sentence, right? I said, wait, your customer should be in love with your product, but the product being in love with the customer, I thought that's not something I've ever thought
Henry
about.
Henry Ford would disagree, because he was also the guy who said, if you ask customers what they wanted, they would
Faster
say faster
horse,
horses.
right?
Yeah. So, yeah, pretty much. But I don't know, man. See, the thing is, I think right now we're living at a point where you just have a lot of databases which you're actually able to take. Marketing feels like a response.
Interesting. Yep.
Right. So from that point of view, maybe it's true today more.
Wonderful. Okay, I have a bunch more say, but I'm just going to ask one in the interest of time. So this is just another thought that made me laugh. I don't even know if it makes any sense. So ads are for lazy people, for the people that don't have time to think about why they buy brands.
I disagree. I think bad ads are for lazy people. It's pretty sad, because we've just no one even bothers saying bad ads, because the assumption is that when they talk about ads, they mean something bad. Right. So I don't think people don't like ads. I think people don't like bad ads. And we just don't make bad ads and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's actually the only. Yeah, dude. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of good advertising. We just need to make more good advertising. It'll be fine.
Have you ever had a client or seen a brand who you feel like you don't need advertising?
Oh yeah. There are lots of brands that don't need advertising in that sense. Okay, let me put it this way, right? Like there are lots of brands that have existed without traditional advertising. I would still say Elon Musk's Twitter account is the biggest advertising for SpaceX and this one, right? Or the fact that the Tamil Nadu government did not allow private bars to exist was the biggest advertising for the local brands of beer, because you could only get them at that one place. Right. So when we say advertising, I think the traditional media form, every brand needs to just, I guess, be known in interesting ways. And a lot of times it's serendipitous. A lot of times that's traditional. It completely depends on what the reality is of that brand. But I wouldn't agree that if we were to look at that, the wider meaning of fuck advertising, let's just say promotions. Right. So do you think brands need promotions? Yeah. Do we especially think great products need promotions? Absolutely. Because how many times have we heard of tragic stories of small brands that have not been able to the McDonald's paradox, right? Do you think have you seen The Founder, the film?
Yeah, I have.
Right? Okay. In hindsight history, if we held the etc., are you on team Ray Kroc or anti team Ray Kroc?
Oh yeah, I'd have to say I'm on team Ray Kroc.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, we're all happy that McDonald's is what it is today. We're very sad for the founders. We wish life had been different for them. We wish they were. We wish a lot of those things, but we still like the fact that we're able to get McDonald's a mile from our house. So that's I guess was that. All brands, I think if you have a good product, I think it's a moral responsibility that you have to promote it well.
Beautiful. That is really profound. I love that.
If you have a bad product, you have a moral responsibility to make it a good product, not to market it well.
Right.
So I think one of the cancer that exists today is to focus on marketing bad shit. I don't think it's possible to that's what we should get rid of. Bad ads exist not just because the ads are dude, how many times have you seen an ad which is okay, or people who are like, oh my god, their ad is shitty, but I love the product so much.
Yeah.
You don't hear that also too often.
Right. It's true.
It's just mostly bad ads for bad products, because
Yep.
people just assume that they can market their way out of bad products and bad services. So I think there is a conversation that's happening within companies about where if we think that, you know, between in the advertising world, if we think there's some sort of tension between the marketing team and their agency, there's a shit ton of tension between the marketing team and the product team,
right,
internally in every
Yep.
company, right? So that's where this is just the river, man. That's the glacier. So if you have a good product, then you get into, like, put the money over there. I think I wish something that and I think a lot of this is just the same thing. I think that's that. I don't think I have anything to add to that. Yeah.
I love it. All right, man. Very last, very quick thing then. If there's anyone that's inspired you recently who you'd love to give a shout out to,
oh wow, that's a
it's your
good
time.
question. I would love to give a shout out to all our recent winners from Chutney who won this year at Cannes.
Perfect.
About 80-90% of them are first time winners.
Wow.
They're getting their first line, and you don't get to win your first line twice. So they've all had this once in a lifetime feeling, and I hope they feel stronger. And I hope they realize, this is one of those things where they just, this, like, everything that they do in life now is going to be something that a Cannes line winner is doing.
Right.
So if they criticize something, that's a Cannes line winner. They give feedback, it's a Cannes line winner. So it's crazy pressure, it's crazy privilege, but they're all part of this very, 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 I'd like to think exclusive inner circle of winners. It's possibly 3-4% of people in the industry who've made it this far. They make people like me want to be better, because I can't. They deserve a great boss, mentor, friend, whatever. So the people like them are the reason people like me need to constantly think about whether we're good enough for people like them.
What a beautiful note to end on. Man, this was, I don't know what this was, actually. This was crazy. This was like, this was fun. I can't wait to hear back, listen back to this, because I feel a bit disorientated right now, because I feel like we went off script so many times, which was the whole point as well. Like, we just ended up in a place I didn't really imagine. Like, we were talking about spirituality, drugs, religions as poetry, and so many other things. So thank you. This was fun.
Thank you so much, man. This was, we've recorded this on a Sunday. So I just hope, like, if people are hearing this on some crazy Monday morning, just remember this was recorded on a chill Sunday morning. And yeah, thanks, man. This was fun. This is great.
Brilliant.
Fun. And congrats on Inspo. I totally meant everything that I said. I think it has the potential to be a great product, and shit like this is the soul of this brand. I hope it never ever loses its soul.
Thank you so much, PG. That means a lot. And congratulations to you and the team. And we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.